Greetings, Guardians, and welcome to another Bungie Ride-Along. This is a series of shows on Twitch where we explore an aspect of our game with some developer commentary that gets shared up to you in a live fire exercise. Today, we call it a Raid-Along because we're going to be playing through the Wrath of the Machine. I'm Deej. As always, I'll be your host. And today on the hot seat, we have two people who represented a very large team at Bungie that brought the Wrath of the Machine and all of the SIVA-infested baddies that you find and confront within. And they're going to be taking us through the creative process that has brought this challenging series of encounters to life. And they are Joe Blackburn.
Hey, Destiny.
And Rusty Durbin.
Hi.
Guys, thank you so much for, first of all, creating a raid that has given the community something to enjoy, to challenge themselves and their fire teams, score some sweet loot, rank up. I mean, for so many players, the raids are the pinnacle of the Destiny player experience. So I'm glad that you could join us on stream today as we play through with one of our teams to tell us some stories about what it's like to work on something like that and bring it to life. So before we jump in and do that, do me a favor. Let's complete the perennial ritual of you telling us what would you say you do here.
Okay, I'm Joe, like Dee says. I was the PO for the Wrath of the Machine Raid product owner, which basically means there was a really talented group of people that put this whole raid together, and when they give the paper to me, I dot a bunch of I's and cross a bunch of T's and then put my name on the top. Yeah, that's about what I did for this raid.
And my name's Rusty. I'm an environment artist. I did a lot of what we call mass out all the way into finishing. I didn't do it alone, but that's kind of my role here. Oh.
So you create the environments where we play the raid, you build the world, you create the scenery, you work with a large team. It
Yes.
must be said always that creating a raid involves just about every discipline that we have in the building here at Bungie. We need some good sound leadership to decide what those encounters are going to be like and what the difficulty is like, and we need a great place where that stuff can happen.
Yep.
Well, that's going to be the story that we tell throughout the course of this demonstration of the raid. We've done these ride-alongs before, we've done a few raid-alongs before, but this will be, at your insistence, the first heroic raid-along.
Yes, we got a crack shot team of Guardians that are playing today. Some members of our team we like to call Team Velveeta.
Okay.
And these are the guys that play some of the toughest PvE content before we put it out the door. Okay. And they look at it and make sure that we're submitting something out there that's going to be fun and going to be enjoyable at the community.
Nice. Yeah. So what are some of the rituals? As you're developing a raid, you get Team Velveeta together. First of all, why do you call them Team Velveeta?
Because they find the cheese.
They find the cheese.
Velveeta's not even really cheese, which is a strange
we'll let them,
turn of phrase.
We'll let them handle their own narrative about their product. But our product is a challenging experience for a fire team. You assemble as a fire team pretty much on a weekly basis while you're
correct.
At least on a weekly basis.
Yes.
And we play through these raids. And tell me the story about the trophy.
Oh, yeah. So while we were developing Wrath, I was an honorary member of Team Velveeta for the later half. I was sort of their handicap, essentially, to make sure that some plebes like me could complete the raid.
Sure.
And they have a system where anytime you cause a wipe in a run, you get a tally on the board. And at the end of the playtest, they tally all the tallies you have, and the person who has the most gets a tub of Velveeta mac and cheese. And there was probably a good 3 or 4 weeks where that Velveeta mac and cheese lived at my desk permanently.
So not so much a trophy, but a totem of shame.
Totem of shame.
To sit on your desk and remind you to get good.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's meet some of the members of Team Velveeta that we've assembled to confront Axis in his own stronghold. These are 3 of them. Guys, do me a favor, introduce the people that you've assembled to represent Velveeta today.
Great. On the left, we've got Dave Petty. He's from our IT team. He's one of the guys that comes out and plays raids with us a lot, and he's going to be playing a hunter, I think, on the stream. Yeah. And then we got Travis Dorsey. He is a member of the raid team. He is one of our core testers. He really brought this raid home and made sure that we shipped something that wasn't going to break when we put it out to the community, or break too bad. And then right next to him, we got Frank Robbins, a world artist who's Rusty's partner in crime.
Yep.
And really made this raid shine. A lot of these beautiful spaces you're going to see are due to the hard work that he put in.
And then it also must be said that outside of our studio, our Twitch studio is only so big, so outside of our studio, we have the rest of the fire team. We're not about to attempt a heroic mode with only 3 dudes. So who are the other 3 people?
We've got Chase Christian, another member of the IT team. Brandon Bjarnason.
Bjarnason? Yeah, it's like Gallarhorn. The J is silent.
Okay.
We're trolling him so hard right now. We know it's Bjarnason.
Our third member of the IT team, who reps Velveeta pretty strong, we should say. Those guys come pretty hard, and we really appreciate them coming out and sacrificing their time to make these raids what they are. And then finally, round us out, we've got Zach Bogatz, who is a recent Bungie grab. He just joined the raid test team, and he's been kicking some serious butt, and we're happy to have him.
Cool. So in terms of recent additions to our team, we're always looking to find amazing people to come to Bungie and help us make Destiny awesome. How long have you been working at Bungie?
I've been working here almost 2 years. I interviewed at Bungie, I think, a week after the Crota raid came out.
Okay.
So Crota's End. I was working at another studio across the country, and I was playing Vault of Glass, and I said, this is the content that I want to make. I want to make this game, and I'm so fortunate to be here working with this team of awesome people.
Well, we're obviously fortunate to have you. Wrath of the Machine has been received very warmly by our community. It's interesting, so many people in the building were here while Destiny was invented. You have a unique perspective of Destiny was a thing, raids were a thing, and you looked at those raids and said, that's what I want to do for a living.
Exactly.
Follow your dreams, kids. And Rusty, talk to us about how you came to Bungie and when that was.
So I've been here for about 4 years now. I've had the privilege of working on all Destiny releases, which has been great. I came into the building not having a single clue what Bungie was working on.
Yeah, me too.
And so it's really been an honor and a privilege to be making this great content that, we all enjoy. And so we're glad that everybody else enjoys it as well.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Of all the destinations that you've built for us to play Destiny, what's your favorite corner of our living social world?
I would have to say Cosmodrome because I've spent the most time working on it. But I honestly don't know what we call it in the live game, but we call it the colony ship, that big, massive thing in the middle of Cosmodrome. I had the honor to work on the one you see out in the sky, and then the mission where you go up in it. Yeah. And so that's very close to my heart. And then I got to make this big destructed piece of it that's in the raid too. So.
Perfect segue. Let's join our fire team. They have touched down in the destination of the raid. As we said, there are 3 members of Team Velveeta, and the other 3 are out just outside of our studio here, but they will play as a full fire team of 6. And we can see there the fuel cell from one of the colony ships has been twisted by the Fallen Devil splicers, and we're going to enter that space. We're going to confront them on their own ground. Anything else to say before we begin?
Let the fun begin.
Let the fun begin, Team Velveeta. This is a heroic raid-along, and we are off to the races. So, gentlemen, talk to us about what we're seeing, talk to us about what you made, and tell us some of the stories that led to the creation of this activity.
Yeah, so this first encounter, from the earliest sort of ideas of what this raid were, we really wanted to push the idea of the first encounter being a boss encounter and teasing one of our bosses out in the public space. And so everything that you see here is born around this concept, like what would it be like if we took a boss and we put him out into the destination? And I think that what we came up with is pretty interesting. You get to fight the boss a little bit, and he gets to do that moment where he runs away and gets healed up by Siva. So I'm pretty happy with that we were able to sort of make that dream come alive. I think one of the interesting things that sort of came out of this raid is this idea of wanting you to have freedom to move throughout the space, and this encounter sort of embodies that for us. We were playing a lot of Kingsfall when we were making this raid, and one of the reactions we had from Kingsfall was there was a lot of standing in this specific spot and guarding this specific spot or standing on this plate for a period of time. And as we were coming up with encounters, This encounter initially was just this thing where it was going to be like Vaulted Glass, where you were defending these cranes that were making SIVA charges, and you just had to defend them from these big shanks. And we wanted to really push you out and say, no, we want people to have to move through this space.
And that gave you some freedom to develop the space.
Yeah, certainly.
We get to be able to create nice open spaces where we can choose our attack vector, or we can choose where we like to stand, or our vantage points, or our perches.
Yeah, we created some little safe spots, and then we really turned it into kind of a playground, different layers to jump on, little containers to jump through to grab your little charges, or whatever we're calling them.
Yeah, SIVA charges.
SIVA charges.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the blending of form and function. It's not just a matter of things looking cool. Those things are there for a reason, to provide you with cover or to divide the scenery.
Yeah, anything that's over like 2 meters big is there for a reason. It has a purpose, and we put it there intentionally.
Yeah.
So we can see that they're confronting the boss here. They're confronting Bossic, and they're using the charges to destroy the boss, to inflict damage. This first encounter is their introduction to a mechanic. Talk to me about the evolution of their understanding of that throughout the experience.
Yeah, so the SIVA charge is really this raid's relic. It's a tool that you get to use to sort of progress all the different encounters. There was a great moment that happened really late in development, actually. Jason Jones, who's one of the co-founders of Bungie,
Yes.
he comes and plays all the content that we produce, and it was about 2 months before we were really locking down, and Jason Jones played through the whole raid, beginning to end, and it's really nervous, obviously, if you're making the content, like, oh, what's he going to say? I hope that he likes it. And he had a really good time playing the raid, and the one thing that he said was, so we have these SIVA charges, and I get them from these cranes, and I throw them at the boss, and they're really cool, and he's like, but I don't understand what they are. Why do these things exist in the world? And so he gave us this challenge, and he's like, can you contextually make sense? What is this big red glowy ball that you guys have made in the raid? And we went to the combatants team, and they actually really helped us out. And we were able to pivot and say, these SIVA charges are the grenades that the Devil Splicers use. And that's how you see all the dregs and vandals, they throw the SIVA charges at you. And fictionally, what this area is the area that produces those grenades for the dreg to take out into the world and use against you to take over the bloodlines.
Yeah, that was really a cool tie-in, how a raid mechanic complemented and encouraged Sandbox in the DLC. I thought that was really cool.
And also gives you a sense of understanding of the world that we're fighting through in the game. The fallen Devil Splicers are kind of clumsily wielding SIVA as a new discovery, as a new weapon, a new way to empower themselves, and now we're using that same weapon against them, which has been a recurring theme in a lot of different raids. We discover the technology and the power of our enemies, and we learn to use that to destroy them. So as these guys are picking up their charges, they're getting warmed up. They're, this is the first encounter. Talk to us about how you designed the first encounter of a raid. Do you want it to be the most difficult encounter? Do you want to ease them into the action?
Yeah, so aside from sharing a lot of fun development stories, one thing we really want to talk about is how we tune difficulty for a raid. As you see, these guys have played the raid a lot, and they sort of were able to blow through the first encounter. They kick down the doors and get in there. And that wasn't always the case. There were times in development where this opening encounter was really, really hard.
Yep.
And if you died on hard mode, you couldn't get back up. There was a revive timer. Actually, if you were to go to orbit right now, there is a wipe screen and wipe stats, and we actually track your stats from the older version of this encounter where you could die. And at a certain point, we looked at our other raids and said, we want this opening experience to be something that's fun, something that's an intro to a raid, and something that you can do if you only have 5 people with, and maybe your last guardian is still, getting his gear together, or he's still eating dinner with his family, and you guys can be like, okay, we'll start, you just join in and be there for the last 2 minutes and get loot and keep going.
So our fire team here, Velveeta has, they've sort of cleared the first obstacle. They've finished the first encounter here. We're going to actually tell them to hang here for just a moment, because Rusty, you've assembled for us a gallery of art that sort of leads us through the development of the Wrath of the Machine. So we're going to actually pause for just a moment, and we're going to take a look at Wrath of the Machine in some of its earliest iterations and some of the ideas that planted the seeds. So please take us through that.
Yeah, so I wanted to show kind of like a timeline of how the project evolves and how concept and ideas come together. It's not always a clear cut, hey, this is what SIVA is and this is how it's going to be. For example, this was a shot of the Foundry early on, and we all loved this concept done by a great concept artist, Sung Choi. And we ran with this for a long time. And then art direction gave us some really good feedback about how it didn't really feel like the entrance of a raid. It didn't have the look of, hey, this is the dungeon entrance. I'm gonna go conquer some bad dudes through this door.
Yeah.
And so we got another concept by Dorje Belbrook of the colony ship just smashing on top of the Foundry. And as soon as we saw this, we were like, yes, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to do. And so we totally ran with this concept, and I actually have a super early screenshot of that in development. You can see some of these random metal triangles on the side that ultimately didn't stick. And then if you cut back to game screen, you see that's the
nice dissolve. So there we are live, and there's our fire team waiting to delve deeper. I got to say, one of my favorite things about working at Bungie is seeing the concept art, seeing the reference material that inspires you guys, seeing the way you take a piece of art and translate it so literally and so faithfully into a playable destination. A lot of times when you show the community concept art, there's this skepticism. Like, that's great art, congratulations on whoever sat down and painted that, but is your game going to be that beautiful? And I think time and time again, you prove that you can build a destination that is equally as beautiful and very literally inspired by the art that those guys create.
Yeah, they really create some awesome, inspiring pieces that we can run with and with our tech make something truly match that spirit of the concept.
So I also want to take a look at, we've got these cranes that have been making the SIVA charges, and there's a concept for the crane. And talk to us a little bit about the ideology here, or, like how we were able to tell a story with the environment.
So the purpose of these cranes, we wanted to say, hey, the Fallen have occupied this Foundry space, and they built their tech on top of these pre-existing Foundry type machines.
Yeah.
And
scavengers reappropriating Golden Age technology all the time.
And we also wanted it to satisfy, the design requirements, and concept team came back with this. And again, this was a really great idea that really proved out both a good visual and satisfied our design needs.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of how heavily design relies on our art department for really pushing our game forward. I'm just a stupid designer that came to concept and said, hey, I need to make this little grenade ball. And I was like, oh, maybe it'll pop up out of the ground or like a tube. And then Sung
like
comes,
a Pez dispenser?
Yeah, right, because that's my simple little design brain.
Yeah,
and Sung comes back and he's like, have you ever seen a spider that makes a web, or a cotton candy machine? And he had all these crazy concepts of this crane that was going to come around and spin, and it was going to create the ball, and it was going to slide off. And I was like, yeah, I understand.
Awesome. Yeah.
And at the same time, raids are full of visual cues that tell the player, here's what you need to understand to solve this problem. Here's how you can sort of riddle through this mystery, or misery, if you fail to do so. That was a Freudian slip right there. But the way the environment tells a story is very interesting to me, because you were talking about how, as the crane element lifts, you know that the SIVA charge is coming together. But you also, if Travis can kind of show up and take a look at the dials and the gauges that you actually put on here, this is all very deliberate, right?
Yeah, so this is a great example of how iterative our team is. From early seeing Sung's concept of the crane, we thought, oh, this should be the progress meter for the encounter. As you deposit charge, the crane's going to get higher and higher, and it's going to get to the state where it's almost turned on. And all of us in the raid team would be able to look at those cranes and know, oh, we're 70% done.
Yeah.
And then through playtests, we realized, oh, people are getting shot while they play this encounter, and no one's looking up in the air to see where the crane is in progress. And Spec Ops came through and saved our rears and was able to put just a giant progress meter on the front and say, hey, you can look at this thing at any time and you can see like how close you are.
And we call them spec ops, but to our community, what's the essential function that they serve as part of our creative team?
Anything that animates is got animation tied to effects. It's the spec ops team. Anything that gets destructible, dials like that, all spec ops stuff.
They take your playable geometry and they make it more dynamic.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else we want to say about this space before we invite our brave fire team to delve deeper into
Let's move on.
All right, Travis, you have the comm. You can forge ahead. We got more bosses to destroy.
Yeah.
Oh no! And the watching world sees a missed jump.
Was
There
that
we
on
go.
was that on the Bungo Bingo chart?
Yeah. Reddit made their bingo cards for this raid, so we'll see if somebody got to tick off a box. So it wouldn't be a raid if you didn't give me a jumping puzzle to make my palms sweaty. Just watching this happens gives me a sense of vertigo. Talk to us about this transition and what kind of experience you wanted to create for the player.
Well, more than anything, we wanted to get you inside the wall, bring back that familiar experience of being inside the wall, but being able to explore it. One thing I wanted to do, though, was not give you that same elevation experience that you initially had in the wall. So I wanted to bring you up to the very top of the inside to have that look down, and you can see those large support beams and remember, oh, hey, I used to hang out down below there. And so that was the big challenge with that ball, is getting you all the way up to the top of the wall. And
You're killing me with this. You're killing me by not taking the long way. You're just absolutely making me dizzy here. I don't play with that subclass, so anytime I see other people play in a manner that is not familiar to me, it's just it's like uncanny valley shit. And then we can also obviously see evidence. Whoa! Man!
Wow.
Showboating. And then you get sunk.
Taken out by 2 normal splicers.
Yeah, that ought to teach you some humility.
So, I mean, I think there's some cool juxtaposition. I'm sure the community wants to see Bungie sort of conquer these hard mode raid encounters, but the worse these guys do, basically, the more stories you guys are going to get as we have to fill airtime of these guys falling through the wall.
Indeed. It also, it's very interesting to hear stories about when you're creating a raid, do you think about heroic mode first, or do you design the base experience and then think, okay, how can we make this harder?
I think we start in our design documents with a whole picture of what we want the final heroic mode to look like, and then we start building out from that the very smallest core, what the most basic mechanic is, and over time we sort of hook in these other mechanics that that we'd been planning on doing for so long. Generally, if we do the whole thing first, the first time we play it, we're like, oh, this is way too hard. There's so much going on here. So we have that plan in our back pocket, but we really start with this just nugget of an idea and really iterate on that little nugget.
Yeah. All right, so our fire team is looking to consolidate their power in one place. And now here we go with the next encounter. So talk to us about this space. How did you construct this space to host a very specific type of encounter, and how did you want that specific encounter to be challenging?
I can field how we built it.
Do it.
So we built this in the hopes that the team would break into 2 people per lane, and so 2 people in the middle and 2 groups of 2 on the sides, and then engage the waves that came at them. And so we built this space with that in mind, and also very perilous to traverse lanes unless you take the safe back route.
Velveeta, if you are ready, you are clear to engage. You were saying.
And so that was the main purpose, or the main idea of this room. Perilous transition between lanes unless you're on the back wall, the furthest away from the boss.
Actually, what you just saw there, Vosik teleporting in and him sort of using Siva to grow back strong,
Yeah.
is that was a big opportunity for us to take some of the DLC fiction and really incorporate it really strong into this raid. The initial iteration of this experience had you taking Vosik to 50% in the opening encounter, and then you finishing him off here. And when we play tested that, it just doesn't feel good to have this guy with this huge health bar and you're taking small chunks.
Yeah.
And we said, well, we really wish we could have him regenerate health in, the second time you fight him. And lo and behold, Siva came along, and Siva was like, that's what it is, right?
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
this regenerative technology.
And I think it's great that a raid is sort of the culmination of all of our efforts as entertainers. We create these fantastic environments for you to explore. This is where they become the most threatening. We tell these stories about confronting enemies. This is really their last stand. And we create this explosive sandbox with all these different ways to fight, and this is where you can require a fire team. I think it was interesting when Gavin Irby was talking to Game Informer, and he said, we got to design for teams. We got to design activities that were complicated enough that would require a team, and when you remove those considerations about, can one person solve this, it's like, no, they don't, they're not expected to. So you can create something a little bit more elaborate for people.
Yeah, I think our ultimate design goal here for the team aspect is we want you to always feel like having another person is helpful. Having more people, you're really glad that you have them because there's this extra piece of slack that they can pick up. Mm-hmm. Maybe if someone dies, that you can still finagle your way out of the hairy situation that you're in. But man, you'd much rather have 6 people than 5 people.
Yep. So as we play through these environments, Rusty, we see, we see the wastelands, we see, the corrupted ecosystem of old Russia. We see these Golden Age vaults. We see sort of the blending of human technology and fallen Devil Splicer technology. Talk to us about how you can use those design elements so that the environment can tell a story as they go through the encounters.
Certainly. So we wanted it to feel, our internal name for this bubble, this map part, was called the Nest, and we wanted it to really feel like the Fallen were in here nesting and brooding and creating their contraptions. And so, for example, this room, this is Vosik's main den. He's hanging out here. He's got his eye on the sky with all those cameras or whatever, and we really wanted to sell that they're inhabiting it and they're kind of
Oh!
And we have a wipe.
Did he miss?
He missed the door. So we were going to give him one big attempt at challenge mode, but it looks like they're
All right.
gonna sacrifice themselves and forego the extra loot here.
That's your one attempt, guys.
It was good effort.
It was a good effort, but no challenge mode for you today. And that is our first wipe of the encounter. And the chat room explodes with wipe hype. Wipe hype. We set ourselves up for that one with the emotes that we provide to our subscribers. All right, Velveeta, don't lose heart. Take 2. Let's defeat Vosik.
Yes. So one thing we see the community talk about a lot of this fight is the difficulty ramp of this fight, and how it's a real hurdle for people to get over. And believe it or not, this encounter, the iteration that they're playing now, is so much easier than what we had about a month before we shipped. When you move into hard mode, the changes are really simple. It's just 6 grenades and TVs with a lot more health. And what that does is it forces all of your Guardians at some point to not be shooting their guns at Devil Splicers, but instead to be shooting an object or holding an object. And when we first were playing this, the TVs took all of your concentration. It was a huge DPS check. People were using heavy weapons, people were using weapons of light to get that TV down, and the ads were just merciless. If we spawned grenades on you, we never stopped spawning ads.
Yeah.
And it was just this experience where we were going through and playing it and saying, is this the kind of experience we want people to have every time they play the heroic raid for the second or third time?
Yeah.
The first time you beat the encounter, it's really cool that like it was this really hard experience, but having played a lot of Kingsfall, Oryx hard mode, like having your group go in there and just slam their head against the wall over and over again isn't a super fun experience. And I think we were able to take a few dials and actually really dial back the difficulty just by taking the big TV health and cinching it down a little bit so it's not the end of the world if everyone isn't shooting at all times. And what we really did was create a reprieve. Anytime you see those SIVA charges started spinning up, we stopped spawning ads for about 10 seconds. And that's your time where you can kill everything.
Oh, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just that little let up of spawns makes all the difference in the world to me.
Shark's 3D man in chat is saying, "Oh my God, I hated this boss day one," and they're talking about how it was harder. Wow, and that's a crucial part of how we make raids is playing and iterating and learning and going back and making it different and then playing again. That's why Team Velveeta is so important to our creative process.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I actually want to touch on because it was a huge cornerstone for this raid. We had a hard mode essentially that was locked and ready to go about a month before we shipped that was so blisteringly hard.
Yeah.
And we took a look at what we enjoyed playing in Destiny and what we enjoyed as a repeatable activity that we wanted to play with our friends and socialize with our friends. And we took a look at all the encounters and said, let's dial these back. Let's make hard mode interesting and engaging, but not something that when your friends ask you if you want to do it, you're like, oh, groan.
No way,
this is going to be
man.
this 5 hours and I'm
Yeah.
going to hate everyone by the time it's done.
Interesting and engaging, but fun.
Yeah.
And that's what people in our community, when they talk about this raid, they say, it's fun. This is one of the funnest raids they've played. And when you say you don't want an experience that feels like beating their head against a brick wall, I personally appreciate that because I don't want to have to go out into the world and when they say, so talk to us about the new raid. Oh, it's like beating your head against a brick wall.
Yep.
You know, I mean, we talk about teamwork, we talk about chatter and collaboration and problem solving, and you've given the community that with this activity. So,
Yeah, I mean, even where we landed, I think you'll still say, like, these guys are really good, and they just wiped on this encounter. And
Yeah.
you're still going to have those hiccups and those moments where you're like, okay, this is going to take 10 more minutes than I wanted to take before I can go watch Westworld or...
Westworld. Don't get me
Westworld.
started. Don't get me started. Let's stay on topic. That doesn't look like anything at all to me. So, Rusty, a couple of times when you've talked to us about the encounters, you have used terminology that reminds us of spiders. You've talked about, like an arachnid, sort of weaving their web, or you've talked about the nest. How much does the culture of the Fallen as sort of an arachnid type of humanoid creature factor into the places that you're building?
Yeah, a lot of our inspiration actually comes from the Fallen. We base a lot of our ideas just trying to understand what they are. And to us, they're these spider-like space pirates. And they crawl around in all kinds of weird holes and just kind of set up shop wherever is convenient for them. And so definitely want it to feel like, hey, they're crawling in this tight hole and building a secret lair, and that's where they're hiding their SIVA monitors and stuff. So things hanging, like those tanks that you jumped on, just kind of randomly hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're just taking bits that they found that they want to turn something into, and they don't have the time, so they just kind of strung it up
Yeah.
in the wall.
They're spider-like, almost bird-like at the same time.
Yep.
Definitely predators, though. So they're making progress. Talk to us about how you wanted this encounter to progress. How long is too long for an encounter in a raid?
Yeah, I think that's something that we talk about a lot, where the sweet spot for time is. And we look at, really, if you're the best of the best, we like to think that once you've gotten up to max light, that if your team knows what they're doing, they can do about 2 rotations on any fight. And so I'm actually really happy with where Vosic ended up health-wise. If you really push it, you can definitely make them in 1 round of regular ads and then 1 round of Shanks. And some people actually, they barely won't get him to Shanks because he switches mooks from from vandals and dregs to shanks at 50%. And so like these guys, they were just off of it, but they could still potentially get it in one shot here.
We go DPS call-outs from the team.
Yeah. And this was another thing that we really wanted to incentivize in this raid, and that's these section where everyone gets to use their guns in their sandbox to control how fast the encounter progresses. And that we weren't artificially gating you with some amount of detonating bombs or hitting a certain amount of switches. Like, those encounters are fun, but we really wanted to incentivize this, like, yeah, you can, as fast as you can shoot the boss, you can be done with this encounter. So
Spartan Man in our chat asks, so what's with the door closing now? It was always open and you didn't need to slide under it. Ask them.
Yeah, so one change for hard mode. We love this idea of like the action movie of sliding in.
Yeah.
Like at the last second.
Yeah. Reaching back for your fedora.
Yeah, we didn't consider it as a difficulty thing, but more of an entertaining action to do. Just like, oh, I got to get under the door before everything blows up.
Yeah. In before lock.
Yep.
I think some of our favorite moments from this encounter come from that locking your friend outside the door, and this to us was just a little more of that high intensity. Like, is he gonna make it or not? He's gotta slide through the door.
We got a man down. Uh-oh.
Man down.
Pope Bear wants to know, how did they come to the decision on how the challenge mode would work?
That is a great question. Challenge modes are really difficult.
Yeah. I get it.
It's
difficult to make, you mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things that as we iterate on an encounter, a lot of times what we thought was going to be the challenge mode changes.
Yeah.
We initially had this idea that when you entered DPS phase for Vasek, we were going to turn on all of the monitors, and they were all going to count down. And challenge mode was going to be if you shot all the monitors, you didn't have to run to a room. And we played that, and not surprisingly, it's not fun to shoot a lot of objects.
Yeah. And
we felt like we were losing the most fun part of the encounter, which was running to the rooms and hiding into the rooms. So we actually had to pivot. So what are we going to do for challenge mode? And one day we thought, like, we have these 4 rooms, we light up 2 at a time. Like, what if you had to close both in an interesting way? And we just started dropping 2 grenades at the end of a DPS phase. And the thought is, most groups want to use those grenades to throw at the boss and get an extra like 200,000 damage on him. But if you want to do it challenge, you can coordinate which guy is going to take a grenade where and actually close these rooms up.
So Rusty, talk to me more about the monitors. There's a lot of questions in our chat about the monitors, the function, the lore. What's the threat and what is the role that they play in just sort of the lore of the game?
So it actually came from art direction of how the Fallen are taking the SIVA technology and what are they doing with it and why.
You see that? Sorry. the final twirling sword of death is something that I really appreciate right now.
They did it 5-man too. Good job, guys.
Yes, good job. Good job.
But to finish that idea, it was loosely based on the concept that there was actually like a scientist SIVA guy that was over here doing like weird experiments in here, and we ultimately didn't run with that idea, but the TVs definitely stuck because of the encounter and they worked great. So that's why they're around.
All right, collect your engrams. Now we're going to move on. We don't have any concept art to share right now, do we?
We do have the evolution of Vasek. It's just a couple of character
concept art break. All right, Velveeta, enjoy your dance party. We're going to take a look at some early visions of Vasek.
Yeah. So in the beginning, we were calling these fallen guys machine lords, and the idea was that they are taking any material, any tech that they can, and just kind of attaching it to themselves and enhancing themselves with it, as you can see with this guy with the car door as some armor.
Yeah, exactly. A car door is a faceplate, if you will.
Ultimately a bit whimsical, and as the idea evolved, Vasek became this guy, and much improved over the car door face guy. And that's all the concept I got, so they can move on.
Okay. And we take you live to sitting on the floor. Gosh, what excitement. On your feet, Velveeta. You are clear to engage deeper into the raid. So one of the things that we're about to experience here is, when you think of a raid, when you think of previous raids, you think on a lot of occasions being in the dark, being underground, being in an enclosed space. And one of the great things you do with this raid is you start outside and you move inside and things get claustrophobic and then things open wide open again. From an environmental standpoint, you got to infuse this raid with a lot more variety. Talk to us a little bit about the thinking in that.
Yeah, that was all very intentional from day one. We didn't want the raid to be just another dungeon crawl where you jump in a hole and explore some crazy dungeon, or like in the last raid, it was the giant dungeon spaceship. Being on Cosmo gave us a great opportunity to balance the interiors with the exteriors, like you said, the tight spaces with small spaces.
Yeah.
And it's really great to just see an exterior environment in the raid.
Did I mention the vertigo?
Yes.
God, I mean, I love you guys
Whoa,
for what
where
you
you
make,
going,
but where are you
Travis?
going? Where are you going? What? Yes! Worth it. No, you're not. No, you're not. Oh, and the final parting shot. All right, Showboat. We got an audience watching. So this reminds me of the name of the name of the clan that some of our Velveeta raiders are in is called Notch Boss.
Yes.
Talk to me about the sort of the inside joke, and I believe that some people in the community are aware of this as well. What's the inside joke around Notch Boss?
Go for it, Joe.
So Notch Boss definitely predates my involvement with the raid team, and it comes across that big chasm in Vault of Glass, and when you jump across that chasm and you walk across the little ledge,
Redeemed.
there's a notch right at the end of it, and
Yes.
if you just keep walking, that notch will knock you off, and you will fall into a pit. And the raid team loved that experience so much that actually every raid has some version of what we call the Notch Boss, and that is the little dip that's designed to just push you off into a ledge.
The environmental hazard that kills you.
Yep.
Yeah. The world itself is your enemy on some occasions. So we do have there we go. What's the holdup? Be brave. Do the thing.
Before we start this encounter, I wanted to show again what this space used to look like.
Okay.
How it evolved.
Concept art break.
Yeah. If you want to go to the concept screen, this is another great piece by Dorje, and we really wanted to go for the Mad Max Escape from LA kind of vibe where all the oil cans are on fire and smoke and everything.
Yeah.
And here's a screenshot, an early screenshot of what that used to look like before everything developed into more of a snowy wonderland. And the reason why we pivoted from this look is we always want our destinations to be inviting and something you want to look at over and over again.
Yeah.
And to the team, this was a cool look, but it definitely wasn't that vibe we're trying to get of something you want to go enjoy.
Now this is a call out to a story about the original inspirations of the Wrath of the Machine raid. So Joe, tell us a story about how you decided to build this raid and what led you there.
Yeah, so I think there's two stories that sort of really intertwine into each other here. When we were searching for a raid theme a long time ago, we have these sort of quarterly meetings, big Bungie team meetings.
Yes.
And this is actually one of the coolest parts about working for Bungie, if you're a Destiny fan, is Deej and all the future Destiny crew get up in front of the company and they show us where Destiny is going.
Yes.
Maybe if you're not on that team, you get to see some insight into what other teams are doing.
We work really hard on
Yeah.
putting those meetings together. So I'm flattered that
Yes.
that team meeting inspired
Yes. That team meeting inspired us because the raid team actually skipped that team meeting and went to see Mad Max Fury Road.
you. Uh-huh.
And after this, so we know we're building a raid, and Gavin, who's the raid team lead, is talking to the raids team, and he's talking to us about a concept that is very important, and that's scope. And scope for people outside the game world is we have a certain amount of people that work here and a certain amount of time we have to make things, and we have to make our ideas fit into this time schedule. And he's like, guys, we really need to be cautious about scope. I want you to think of encounters that we can make that are really respectful of scope. And what can we do with existing combatants with slight tweaks? Like, how can we make really interesting things without blowing our budget?
Yeah.
And so, I'm thinking about this welder Vosic guy, and he's like, we could just use a captain. And Brendan, who's did the Access encounter, is like, I think we could take the spider tank rig and we could make it into a guy, and we could do it really cheap. Like, we're talking with combatants, and I think they can do it. And then, so we're really happy that we've gotten into scope, and we go into this meeting, and Gavin comes in and he's like, guys, I want to build a war rig.
Yeah. Well, it's inspiring to work with perfectionists and with people who, we say, hey, do it in a reasonable time frame or do it with a reasonable scope. And Bungie always says, no, but I got this awesome idea. All right. So we're going to delve further into this. Do you want to confront the activity before we show them?
Let's do the activity.
Art? All right. Team Velveeta, you are green to engage.
Yeah, and this siege engine is actually the most expensive animating object in our game.
Oh, really?
As you can imagine by looking at it.
Now, when you say words like cheap, when you say words like expensive, I was always confused about this when I first came to Bungie, because people would say these things at those team meetings.
Okay.
Like, look what we can do, and we can accomplish this, and it's really cheap. You're talking about what? What are you spending when you're talking about that?
When I say expensive, I mean expensive from a memory standpoint, from geometry standpoint. It's heavy in geometry. It's got a lot of moving parts. A lot of people worked on it.
Uh-oh. Here comes.
So this is our first raid cutscene.
Yes.
Which is pushing the boundaries of sort of what we can do in this activity. I think this one went pretty well. I mean, try things like this in the future.
Yeah, we had a lot of concerns of are people going to think it's weird that we're teleporting them during a cutscene, all this stuff, but I think it worked out well.
I want to give Velveeta a hard time here. Back when we were playing this encounter, for a while, Velveeta kept saying, there's no way this part of the encounter will ever be hard. It'll just be a bunch of dregs that you shoot, and we're really good. We'll put bubbles up. Like, it'll never be engaging. And there was about 2 weeks where we took hard mode and we replaced all of the dregs with knives, with captains. And I think we played that twice,
Yeah,
and
just 2
Velveeta said,
times.
never again.
Never,
Sorry,
ever again.
Like, please don't make us do this.
I
And
remember
so
that.
that's why the sort of the front of the War Rig encounter is a fun, light experience.
Well, for you hardcore raiders in chat right now, these people on Team Velveeta, they're the real heroes. As you can hear, these people suffer horrible, terrible things so that you won't have to suffer them yourselves. Of course, there are certainly guys out there like Dado, where when we talk about how hard could a raid be, he's like, yeah, give me that. And we're like, not everybody has a clan that can play a raid with 2 people sharing a controller. So,
Blindfolded.
But yeah, blindfolded. But he understands that.
Yeah, when we talk about repeatable activities, we want to be really careful with the level of intensity that we require players to do on a repeatable basis. But we hear that there's definitely these cool achievements that people want to accomplish, and how we can accommodate that is something that we think of.
Absolutely. In every facet of the game now, you can design your own raid challenges for honor and bragging rights among your friends. If people have their own designs on how the Crucible could be better, go into private matches and create those things for yourselves. So, I mean, we obviously love our community for their emergent behavior and for the ways they take the game and make it their own.
Yeah, the raid team not only are huge Destiny players, but we're big community followers. I think pretty much all of us read every post that hits the Reddit front page that has the word raid in it. We see all the crazy videos that you guys do. I'm a huge Slayer Age fan. Like, when we saw the video of him launching cookies across this encounter space, like, that was so cool. Travis, who is actually playing right now, kept saying like, yeah, I think you can two-man this if you launch people with animations. But he could never quite get it in a dependable state. But he was like, I think we're going to see somebody do it. And sure enough, we get out there and we get to watch the community do awesome stuff.
Yeah, the players always show us what we've created. And so we are moving into a more elaborate phase of this encounter.
Yeah, so this was our twist for hard mode. We tried a lot of different things for hard mode for this that just made the encounter really, really hard. We just made Sandbox really hard at one point. And it just wasn't very fun. Like, there wasn't an interesting change. And I think John Gessner is one of our testers. He kept joking. He's like, what if there was a spider tank? What if there was a spider tank? And then one day, like, I was like, John, we put the spider tank in.
Just drop it on their heads.
And we just drop it right in front of the war rig. And that's actually, that spider tank out in front of the war rig is actually a custom spider tank that has less health than other spider tanks. Because we really want the experience to be about, like, spider tanks are these annoying combatants that drop down on you and they take forever to kill. And we wanted this experience to be like, we dropped a spider tank on you and you were 6 people and you were awesome and you killed it really fast and then you like drug parts over its body and built a war rig.
Nice.
That guys did a good job.
Yes, very efficient.
This is my favorite part of the whole raid, right here.
Just mowing down dudes, or
when you get to be on top of the big moving behemoth and shooting all the peasants down below and they all get run over, like, that to me is what raids are all about.
There you go. Tear down this wall.
So you guys spoke about the community.
Yes.
And earlier today, I was reading a thread on Reddit about people are like, the Siege engine doesn't even make any sense. And during development, yeah, we kind of understood that as well, but we were trying to fictionalize what are these Fallen doing? Like, why is there this giant ball in the Foundry? And the Siva kind of alters their mind, and they're kind of going crazy and building stuff just because they can.
Just because they can. We build stuff just because we can. Like, and I remember the first time this raid was being played, when this was being world firsted, we were all watching on Twitch, and people would get past this encounter, and we're all sitting in the studio going, watch it! Watch it! Please watch it! So thank you, Travis, for watching it.
Yeah.
Nice.
David Hunt and his team and the Spec Ops team did such an awesome job putting this whole thing together. Like the first time we saw the war rig go over the wall and hit the water was huge. And then the audio team, which gets a lot of praise but deserves it and deserves even more than they get.
Yeah.
When that first splash hit and they were mixing it, they said, this splash is louder than anything else in the whole raid. And they all just went like,
Yes, exactly. It should be.
So that encounter back there was the loudest, most expensive. I mean, there's so many accolades you threw at that moment. Do you have any more art that you want to show us before these guys move on?
Yeah, I want to take you back in time one more time.
Concept art break.
So what you see here is a super early prototype of the Siege engine.
Super early.
Super. Do you want to say anything about the prototype at all?
I mean, it shows a lot of our influence, and that we have a love for a lot of media, and that really helps us make raids.
We were totally inspired, and if you look at is that a captain on the top?
Yeah, it's some sort of captain up there.
So if you look really closely, he's got a sweet guitar.
It's just no. I don't know. We don't want phone calls from George Miller. So obviously, I mean, you were just screwing around here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you weren't really going to. Okay, so you have a sense of humor about your creative process, obviously. But it's funny how a lot of these inside jokes, a lot of these funny little whimsical things end up on our cutting room floor, and for obvious reasons, because that's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's what inspires us for. Then you see the concept for the Siege engine, and clearly inspired by that sort of over the top, on fire, spikes everything kind of vibe, which we all love.
I mean, we still have flamethrowers on the top floor.
Yes,
Like that's our
so cool.
Yeah. You can still hear the wailing guitars if you close your eyes. and you imagine. And then we have Travis, who is looking at where the siege engine made its final stand, and you are cleared to leave that behind and delve deeper into the experience. So Team Velveeta, lead us on, and this is another thing you guys do that drives me absolutely crazy, just absolutely crazy.
Oh, I forgot to mention. Nice.
What?
That last concept I forgot to mention was done by Dorje.
Dorje Belbrook.
Sorry, Dorje.
We love you, Dorje Belbrook, whose name comes up so often when we show amazing art that inspired the creation of the game. It's just a perennial shout out that gets given on these ride-along streams.
Yep. It was Dorje.
All right, Belvedere, let's get it together.
So as we move here into the server farm, someone I wanted to call out in particular is Jake Meyer, who did all the work on the crazy binary puzzle that you have to do to unlock the exotic raid weapon.
Yes. The Outbreak Prime.
And he really is he's part of the glue that holds the raid team together. He's one of our really smart technical designers, and aside from putting together really cool puzzles like this, he's always there to bail us out when we get too deep in technical nonsense that we don't understand.
Well,
Yeah, sure.
didn't he tune the Siva charge and all that stuff too?
He did.
Yep.
He did. And this, like everything else in Wrath of the Machine, at one point was much, much harder because Jake is much, much smarter than the rest of us. And for any of you binary-minded people that can take a moment to explain this, it used to be you had to take the digits from both monitors, combine them into one long string, and it told you the quadrant, the row, and the entry. And the row was actually broken between both monitors, so you had to communicate with your partner and decipher binary together.
0, 1, 1,
Yeah.
0.
And there are a few wizards out there that could do it.
We had people just sort of plumbing the depths of this room on the first day of the raid. You know, we watched Triple Wreck in this room for hours, walking around, going, there has to be some rhyme or reason to this. There has to be. And then we thought, oh God, are they going to brute force this? Are they going to brute force this? And then, you know, we started dropping clues on Bungie.net, and, you know, I mean, this was really a cool moment where the community came together and did some awesome problem solving together, you know, between the forums and between some of the leaders in our community, sort of putting the puzzle pieces together and leading the way. I think a lot of the players loved the effort and care that you put into this.
Yeah, and actually you could have, we were very concerned about brute forcing because there was no time gating method behind it.
Nope.
It was just
right
whenever
there.
you could complete the ARG, you
Yeah.
could get in there.
Yep.
And if you'd have just stood on the right platforms day one, we'd have been like, oh, we built this ARG. Like, please do the ARG.
It came together perfect. We were really happy about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, those moments of collaboration between the developers and the players is really what, you know, makes these experiences coming to life so rewarding. Okay, so talk to me. What are we seeing?
This is the descent into the boss room. Much like some of the design elements, it didn't exist until just about the very end of the raid creation process. And it was built out of the necessity to separate the siege engine from Axis in terms of a memory standpoint. We had to slice them apart, and that is our transition space for it. And so luckily because of a memory constraint, we got to make some more cool stuff.
An amazing vista, sure.
Yeah.
And again, to your point, anything bigger than 2 meters serves a purpose,
Yeah.
even if it's a huge building.
Yes.
And I don't want Rusty to sell himself short on the pickle that we put him in there. We were really late in development, and we got this memory budget report back, and it was like, guys, this is really bad. Like, you're gonna blow up somebody's PlayStation in Alabama if we ship this. And I
Not
sort
true.
of had to.
Maybe.
Rusty had built this beautiful raid. Rusty and Frank and all these talented artists had built this beautiful raid, and going over to his desk and being like, hey, can you slice up the raid that you made, this beautiful piece? And not only did he slice it up, but when he put it back together, it was better than it was before.
Do you guys want these guys
crazy
waiting?
feat.
Is there any reason to wait? Do you want to show them anything before we go in here? Your call.
Let's do it at the halfway point.
Okay, so we're going to take a concept art break. at the halfway point. But Velveeta,
Take it away.
take it away. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just didn't want those guys to sit there forever. Oh, and there he is.
This is a total Spec Ops moment that came together with Spec Ops, with environments, with the lighting team. This was a huge undertaking from a completely dark room to just lighting it all up and him animating and all this stuff.
Such a grand reveal. Well, really great curtain pull, which is what I love about environmental storytelling, is instead of, I mean, as cool as it is to interrupt the action for a grand reveal of something like the Siege Engine with a cutscene, when the cutscene is just sort of the way the world behaves, and if you hit your mark and you look in the right direction, you get this amazing vista. Hats off on that. I love it when you guys do that in the game.
An interesting tidbit about the last boss. His name is Axis.
Yes.
But for a long, long time,
Uh-oh.
his name was Mexus.
Okay. As in mechanized?
As in Mexus, who's now the guy that you kill atop the Siege Engine.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hardest parts of making a video game is actually naming anything.
Naming anything. Yeah.
Because there's this process. Not only do you have to get with a writer and really agree oh, we love this name, but there's greater fiction concerns, there's greater DLC concerns, and naming something can just be this horrible, arduous process that's I just don't like that name because it feels weird to me.
Sure.
And there's a bunch of people. And so when they said, okay, well, we really want the last boss to be named Axis and not Mexus, our writer, John Toe, was like, I got you covered. We're putting Nexus in the raid. And we put him on the Siege Engine, and now internally when anyone talks about Mexus, they get really confused because they're like, are you talking about the last boss or the guy on top of the Siege Engine?
Yep. Old Mexus, new Mexus, which one? Naming, I mean, how hard is it to name the raid? You've got so many different people working on this raid. It's like having a child with 50 people.
Yes.
How many people?
I'm very thankful to the patient, John Toe, who's our writer, who helped us come up with a name for this raid. I equate it to naming a child. When you name a child, you only want to have to please the person that you're having a child with.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to have some weird relationship to the name Ashley because that Ashley was mean to them in middle school or
Sure.
something.
I hated Ashley.
And it's the same thing with naming a raid. Luckily, we were finally able to come up with Wrath of the Machine. And the cool part about names is, as stupid as they may sound when you put them on paper, they get to adopt the thing that they are. So Wrath of the Machine became more than its name. It's now the activity itself. And if you like Wrath of the Machine as a raid, you probably think that Wrath of the Machine is a pretty good raid name. So yeah.
I think it's a good name.
Thank you. And I will say, as much as I complain about naming things, I have been the opposite side of that argument too. I know Jill, who did a great job with our weapons and armor names. The first time I got those on my desk, I was like, what are these names? I hate all these names. And that's such a silly reaction to have to something that, is so subjective.
You're talking about Jill Shar on the writing team, who actually sat right where you were sitting when we did the Kingsfall raid.
Yep.
And talked about spinning some of the lore through that narrative experience as well.
She had a lot of good stuff to say in that one.
It's just crazy to think about all the arts and all the sciences that go into making a raid. You talk about writers, you talk about spec ops, you talk about technical design, you talk about
Math and binaries.
Math and binaries and the engineers. And I mean, it is really the science of 1,000 details that go into making all this.
Yep.
So let's kind of bring it back into the immediate threat here. We have Axis on his mechanized throne here. What did you want the essential theme, or what did you want the essential mood or tactical experience to be for the final act?
So we really wanted you to have this feeling where you were culminating against the big bad, and you get to have a long experience with him. You get to really develop a relationship, and that for us means 2 encounters. So Brendan Thorne did the initial work for both the Axis encounters, and I think Brendan's superpower is that he's able to come up with these really cool mechanical puzzles, and they almost always work on the first time. You look at so many of our encounters over the period of development, and they're so different. but you look at an encounter that Brendan made, and this encounter from like the first time we were in a gray box geospace it's got the core loop. It's still there, and like we are so thankful to have people like that on the team that can come up with these sort of slam dunks of an idea.
I need to observe that right when you said the word slam dunk, someone threw a perfect SIVA charge.
Yeah.
So
Joe's
that's-
good like that.
Yeah, yeah. In an editing room, that's what you call serendipitous.
So to sort of bring it back home with sort of our hard mode changes, which I want to talk about for each encounter. For a long time, the turrets were part of normal mode. And we really thought that they actually provided the change that we wanted, this like mechanical change. And we moved them up to hard mode, and this encounter for a really long time was also just painfully difficult. And I think we were able to pivot in a few key areas and make it really a lot simpler. And one of the changes that we made was at the start of a wave, you see that Vandal that comes out, and he's just one Vandal, and he's major, and he's got swords. And those used to actually be a pair of major Vandals that came out right before the captains.
Yeah.
That was brutal.
And what happened was, like, when the captains, everything would be going fine, and the captains would come out, and we'd push 3 majors at you, and everything would hit the fan every single time. And we were able to make this quick change. We're like, let's just reduce the number and put them as the intro to the wave instead of the exit to the wave. And I think the encounter got in a much cleaner, easier to manage place just with a simple change like that.
When everything hits the fan. I appreciate you keeping our stream rated T for team.
Yeah.
So it seems that Team Velveeta is, as requested, taking a concept art
that's
break.
my cue.
There you go.
All
So
right.
talk to us about the seeds of art and inspiration that led to this moment.
So this was the final piece of concept that we got for the boss, and it was very much the dude's attached to the environment. He's controlling what's going on around him. He has found a way to become part of this SIVA infrastructure that they've broken into, and this wasn't the first iteration. There was a long line of early exploration of what the boss looks like, and there's some pretty cool ideas there, and some pretty wonky ones too. But that's how the idea evolves. And this is another shot of when we were trying to identify some of the cool mechanics of the encounter, the next encounter we're about to see. One of them was where we wanted this fantasy of jumping on the back of the boss and shotgunning him in the back. We called it the rodeo.
Yeah. So actually, Brendan used to do this thing when we were playtesting Golgoroth from Kingsfall, the big ogre, and our design playtests can be really long and awful and filled with wipes. And one thing he would do to help make them more enjoyable for him was whenever he taunted Golgoroth, he would try to jump over the top of him and shoot him in the back with a shotgun. And then he kept saying, like, I'm going to make an encounter where this is the thing that you do. And that's how this encounter was born.
Thank goodness we're fans of our own product. Huh?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So anything else to share, or do we move along?
Just one. Okay, by the way, all these character concepts are from Adrian Myshak. By the way, I keep forgetting to say the artist names. I'm sorry.
Marshak, the father of the Gallarhorn.
Yes. And so this was the final concept render that we ultimately ran with for Axis. And now we can take it back to the game.
All right. As somebody who, in my younger years saw the movie Aliens 13 times during its theatrical run, I'm getting a real Alien Queen feel here, like you said, sort of like, part of the environment, rooted to that environment, but then all of a sudden comes down from the throne and gets active, and that's really where the fun begins. So, Velveeta, good luck.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the legs kind of hidden throughout the first phase, not necessarily apparent that that's what's going to happen. And we called it putting on his pants. So as you saw, all the wires dissolve, and all of a sudden he's got his pants on.
Put your pants up. Time to put your war pants on.
So some of our astute community has noticed that, sadly, killing Axis doesn't give you a shot on your 3 of coins. And as we talked about earlier, that's because Axis is actually a spider tank. He is a vehicle, and vehicles don't award 3 of coins drops, which of course we didn't know when we made Axis a vehicle. But just that little bit of of insider baseball of like, yeah, this guy is made off of like a rig that we'd already made, and how some of our technical artists can really sort of pull magic out of nowhere and make a great experience.
If I can take a question from chat, Jay Chris K says, tell us a little bit about the evolution of the supercharge mechanic.
That's a great question. Supercharge came pretty late in development. The core loop for this encounter was always zone defense, and it was about Axis had a few spots where he could teleport, and you needed to stay there and be ready for him to be there if he teleports. And as we were playing the raid, like, we realized that like just standing in one spot was not what we wanted people to do. It wasn't fun to wait for Axis to teleport to you. And so we knew we needed some method of like deciding who was going to be the person that did the dunk, who was going to be allowed to dunk on him, and that became Supercharge. So as you see right now, we got a Guardian that's jumping on his back, and he is Supercharged. He was selected. And what we ended up after a lot of iterations going with was this idea that we were going to randomly select people. We were going to decide you weren't going to be able to choose who was going to dunk. We were just going to say 3 people need to be ready to dunk, and there's 3 or 4 spots you need to cover, and it's completely random. Every time that you dunk, we switch, and it caused this like chaotic, like we all need to talk to each other. We all need to say like, you need to go here, you need to go here, and that's the sort of communication and challenge that the raid team loves. Like, more than thumb skill, we love talking to your teammates and really getting in there and deciding who's going where and who's doing what, and that ad hoc responsibility that you can't just before the fight say, hey, you're doing this role and then we're going to be quiet. You have to talk up, you have to be a contributing member of your team.
Keeping the team on its toes too, and you can't just autopilot this. Like on your 20th time playing this, it's still going to require a little bit of chatter. Although you have told me that you designed this activity so that as you perfected it, as you got better at doing it, it was something that you could do faster.
Yes, and so like I think you see like Axis's health is a great way to look at that. Axis, the more you dunk on him, the quicker you are at it, the more you can take the supercharge mechanic and go onto the other chosen plate and dunk on the plate and everyone get their super. That's also going to push your DPS even harder. You'll be able to get to be done sooner. That's how we spun challenge mode there, was not only do you have to have one person in the right place, but now you have to have 2 people in the right place. They have to coordinate even more.
Yeah.
I think we're all really happy with how this fight and this challenge mode turned out with the particular kind of challenge that it provides.
Rusty, talk to us a little bit about this final environment. This is, it seems to me, one of the cleaner rooms that we've been in throughout this raid.
Yeah, so this was a collaboration between Frank and I. I would work on some of it, hand it to Frank. Frank would work on it, hand it back to me. We tossed around a lot of ideas, but we wanted it to not feel like an explosion of SIVA infection everywhere. We wanted it to feel like the Fallen have tapped into it and are one with it, and it's not really spreading. And cleanliness comes from the necessity to keep the encounter readable in general. In fact, I think there's a lot of detail in this palette, this look that we had to dial back a lot so the encounter read well. There's explosions, there's all kinds of stuff going on that take precedence over the fact that the environment looks cool.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I would be remiss not to mention, you see a lot of swords being used in this raid.
Yes.
Which is really cool. We got these new heavy weapons in Taken King, and then in this raid we were able to really take advantage of them. They became really early on for us the captain killers, and we would constantly use them during the raid to make sure we could handle all the various captains that came out. And one of our testers on our team, Zach, he was a huge fan of the Void Sword. And every playtest, he would use the Void Sword. And I would come to Zach and I'd be like, Zach, why are you using the Void Sword?
Raise lighter.
It's obviously the worst sword. You can use the Fire Sword, which does more damage, or you can use the Arc Sword that, can shoot from range. And he's like, no. Void Sword, it's great. Like, you don't understand, it's so good. And I'm like, Zach, the Void Sword is like the Bulbasaur of the exotic swords. And sure enough, once the raid hits live, some smart people in the community realize that if you use the Void Sword, you can hit multiple of Axis's legs, and it's the best sword to use. And Zach every day reminds me of how great the Void Sword is.
Told you so,
How
guys.
great he is. Yeah.
There was one question from our chat room from a guardian named Blamite, who was asking about the enrage mechanic. And how do you make decisions about the enrage mechanic and when it kicks in and what role it plays in the overall experience?
So we've sort of moved our philosophy on enrage mechanics over time, and we've gone to this philosophy of enrage really only being a thing for cleaning up encounters where you're really struggling. We sort of set a minimum bar that we want you to cross over, and if you aren't crossing over that bar, we want to end the encounter early. And so the enrage here is just a mechanism that says, like, hey, we're going to take away all of your extra spots that you could use for hiding from the wipe, and we're going to say, if you don't beat it the next time, it's over. And that's just sort of for us a way we can say, like, you've been doing this fight long enough. Like, we don't want you to be here barely doing the fight for 30 minutes. Like,
Yeah, dragging you through the mud
Yeah.
is not fun, and we try to avoid that.
Yeah, we don't want to punish players, even if it's in the Crucible with Shax's mercy rule. So it's like you give each raid boss.
yes.
I've seen enough.
Yep.
We want to give the players a chance to say, like, hey, let's regroup, retry. Like, your strategy isn't quite right here.
Yeah, let's
And
take a
that's-
breather.
Generally, if you see enrage go off, you know that you've, like, oh man, we're really, maybe we should be doing something different here.
Yeah.
So enrage and Axis is literally just you've used all the platforms. Like, you've dunked as many times as you can. Let's finish them off now.
It also does encourage you to focus on how to get the most DPS out of each phase, and encourages efficiency and improvement of the encounter as well, which I think is pretty cool.
How close do you think these guys are?
They're real close.
They're real close.
One
Looks
more,
like they're
one
close.
more round, yeah.
Yeah, one more round.
I think so. Yeah.
All right, we've called the shot for Team Velveeta. Let's see if they can live up to the expectations that we've set over here from the relative comfort of these couches. This is really my favorite way to enjoy a raid, is just watching other people play and you guys tell me stories. Why can't it always be like this?
You can, Deej.
It's
You
doubly
can.
my favorite way to play the raid because I forced Travis to play on my account, so I've been accumulating loot throughout this whole stream as part of my compensation for doing this stream. Just getting one extra loot reset.
There we go. A hush falls over the crowd. Make it happen.
There we go.
Where is he?
This is foreshadowing. There he is.
Oh, that was nerve-wracking right there.
With a throwing knife. You've been showboating this whole raid, Travis.
All right.
Good job, guys.
Good game. Good game. Well done. Well done. Twitch Master Scott said we were going to be here for 3 hours, and I thought, oh God,
Yeah.
oh God, you just had to say heroic mode, didn't you?
All day long.
All
Scott
day
was saying,
long.
You're
Well,
gonna have the worst day.
If you're still watching us, this is the 6th hour of a Bungie raid along.
Well, congratulations. Hard fought and well won. Thanks for putting on a good show, Team Velveeta. Thanks for all the stories, guys. I thought that was fascinating, but I'm a creative process junkie. So for those of you in chat, I hope that you've enjoyed getting to know some of the minds behind the experiences that you love to play. As always, we remind you that it takes more than 2 people to make a raid. This is a representation of an entire group of people at Bungie from just about every discipline: art, science, technical design, engineering, world building, spec ops. So we thank you for sort of putting a face on that grand effort and talking to us a little bit about what's important to you when you create these experiences. Any more art to share?
Nope.
We have Okay, we have plundered the depths of our archives.
Yes.
Anything else to say to the community about the way they enjoy these experiences and make them their own?
I think just to let the community know how important they are to us. Huge amounts of the raid team play raids with the community every week. We're big proponents of going out on LFG. We're in your groups, and we're listening. We're players of this game, and so we want to make the best game that we can. And we love you guys, and we hope you love what we're putting out there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Deej and community. It's really humbling being on this couch. It's crazy, and it's crazy to enjoy our game along with the fans, like you saying, LFG, and just having a forum to read their comments and stuff on the internet is really cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks for delighting us with the stories. I think it's important for people to understand that people make these experiences. And we left it alone for a while. We were talking about the raid feeling like, a thing of mystery, a thing of wonder, a challenging thing that turns you into the hero. And before we sort of show up and say this is an experience designed by humans, let's let the hero fantasy play out. But they've had a few weeks to do that now, and they've played through the challenge modes. And I think the raid has the raid been plundered of all of its secrets?
The raid has definitely been plundered. Who knows what secrets left out there in raids that we've done.
Yes.
There's always another door. There's always another chest.
Yeah. Is there? You're just trolling the raid secret subreddit right now. They've been posting in chat like, give us anything.
Don't give up on your dreams.
Don't give up on your dreams. Don't let your dreams be dreams. And with that, we'd like to give a final shout out to Team Velveeta. Thank you for playing, gentlemen. We'll take a picture of the entire team and put it up in the Bungie Weekly Update so you can see exactly who are the faces behind these 6 brave guardians that have taken down Axis in his heroic mode before a live audience while we got to learn a little bit more about how we brought him to life. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deej.
For being on the show today. And Guardians, thank you so much for hanging out on stream, talking to us in chat, and just making this game more awesome than it would have been without you. I'm Deej from Bungie. This has been a Bungie raid-along in a series of ride-alongs where we learn more about the games you play with the people who make them. That's it. That's all. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye-bye.